Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I know that these are crazy times in Crazyville, and I so appreciate you making time for us. I'm honored, actually. And I will try to be quick and honor your time. So my name is Laura Fenn, and I am the founder and creator of the Walking Classroom. I actually thought of the program while I was a teacher in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I see that one of my former teachers, Karen, is on this webinar. So hey, Karen, I hope you and the kids are well. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please go ahead and put those into the chat as well. And we'll try to get to those at the end. I'm actually on two screens here and I have ADD as it goes. So I'm going to try to not look at that screen that has the chat on there, but we'll certainly get to all the questions at the end. Okay, so just a little bit of history about the program. Come on, why is that not moving? Hold on. Why is this not going forward? There we go. By the end of the presentation, you will understand about the Walking Classroom, what it is, as well as the research behind the program, the content and the structure, the resources that we have available to supplement the program. And then we'll be talking about the app in particular, and we'll get you some ideas for hybrid and at-home learning. And then we'll have time for question and answer. So here's a picture from the before times when the kids were actually in class, and they would sit a lot. And now that many, if not most of the kids are home, they sit a lot, and they are in front of screens all day long. And so the problem is only getting worse. So just the idea for the Walking Classroom came when I was teaching in Chapel Hill, and time for PE and recess was getting cut or eliminated. And it actually got to the point where teachers were starting to count the minutes walking from the classroom down to PE or down to art class as physical activity time, and not because they wanted to, but because, by state mandate, there had to be a certain number of minutes dedicated to physical activity and a certain number of, classroom instruction. And it was impossible to do both. And so, with the kids sitting so much, I came up with a way that I could record some of the lessons that I would have taught to my students while they were sitting in the classroom. And they could be out and they could be walking. And my real intention had just been to get the kids some fresh air and exercise. And I figured if they learned anything, that would just sort of be gravy. But what ended up happening is, my principal, she had said, no extra recess, no extra time. So I approached her and I said, hey, what if I recorded my lessons, just some of the lessons that I would have taught to the kids while they were sitting down, and we listened to it while we were outside. And I said, it's still me teaching, it's still my lesson, but we're just going to be in a different sort of environment. And she said, I'm getting ready to retire. I don't care what you do. And only because of that window of opportunity was I able to give this idea of walking while learning a try. And like I said, I had just wanted to get the kids some fresh air and exercise, sort of sneak in. If they learned anything, that was great. And I was shocked at the kids, my periphery kids, my ADHD kids, my dyslexic children, my autistic children, kids, with a multitude of learning differences who really struggled to sit in a classroom all day. They were thrilled to get outside and get some fresh air and exercise. They thought that they were sort of getting out of work. But what ended up happening is their retention was so much stronger, their engagement was so much better, and it was just this really joyful part of the day. So it was a really just serendipitous way that the program started. And 10 years later, we continue to hear so many positive stories from teachers around the country. So that's a picture of the Walking Classroom in action. Instead of the kids sitting in the classroom listening to a lesson about the Boston Massacre, all the kids listen to the same lesson at the same time while they walk. So it's good for everybody because they get some fresh air and exercise. And especially for those students who really do have different learning styles, this is a fantastic way to tap into those learning styles that they didn't even realize that they might have had. And especially if you're at an after-school program or a summer school setting, very often the facilitators, they don't really have a whole lot of background knowledge about different historical topics or different science topics. And with the walking classroom, it's 15 or 20 minutes of, thoroughly researched, kid-friendly educational podcast that are, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but there's lesson plans that support it. There's discussion questions. We have lots of supplemental resources. And like I said, it's sort of stealth learning. The kids don't even realize how much they're benefiting. Oh, of course, don't forget the masks. There we go. Okay, so here is a quick video of the program in action.
It all starts with a few simple steps. An MP3 player with a social studies lesson via podcast, and you've got the walking classroom.
It's been really fun because we get to get out of the classroom and learn stuff that we haven't really learned.
With budgets being cut, very often students only get PE, once, maybe twice a week.
And so former teacher Laura Finn knew there was something more that could be done. Why not combine what students learn in the classroom with exercise?
You walk, but instead of sitting in a classroom, your brain gets more air and it helps you learn.
When we're inside the classroom, we have to sit there all day and do work. But when we go outside, we have fresh air and have energy to play.
Just to give you an idea of how successful this program is, researchers at Elon University started tracking the students' test scores before and after they started the program. In just 10 weeks, their scores shot up.
My kids have seen really good test scores. Yeah, social studies in particular, they've done really well because they listen to me, but they don't always listen to me the best. And when they get to hear it from another perspective.
By getting the students walking every day during school, we're trying to get them to establish healthy lifestyle habits early that they can carry forward with them as they grow older.
So that's just a quick overview of the program. And of course, you're not always going to get beautiful, sunny North Carolina, temperate days. We have schools up in Alaska that use the program. Their threshold is 0 degrees. If it's higher than 0 degrees, they walk outside. If it's below 0 degrees, that's when they decide to stay inside. North Carolina, it's a little bit higher of a threshold, but even on a rainy day, or even if it is snowing, or even if it is, bad weather, a lot of schools, what they'll do is they'll just do an interior route around the inside of the school. So just sort of around the perimeter, up and down the stairs. So you don't have to be outside, that's ideal. But as long as you're up and walking, it's so beneficial, and the kids are just happy to get out of the classroom. Whoops. Okay, so this is one of my favorite graphics, and it just shows how the brain lights up after just 20 minutes of walking. And one of my sayings that I used to tell my students is that if the bum is numb, the brain is the same. And so if you're sitting around on your rump all day, everything is soggy and everything is slow, and you're just really not at your peak performance. You're nowhere near it. But if you're just up and if you're walking, blood gets flowing, your brain gets oxygenated, and it's really primed for learning. If you're doing that while you're learning, all the better. That news clip mentioned that we worked with Elon University. We were also very fortunate to work with University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill a few years ago, and they did a really extensive study. And the bottom line is really just sort of validates what we've been hearing from teachers for years. And mainly that walking improves student learning and retention, not just short term, but also long term. And then also that, walking improved students' mood. And so when kids would walk, they would report feeling happy and engaged and enthusiastic. And on days when they couldn't walk, they were grumpy and tired and mad and sad. So it's just a lot of different reasons why the program makes sense. So what do the kids listen to while they walk? Well, there are a lot of choices. On the mobile app, we have almost 200 podcasts that the students listen to. So there are language arts podcasts, there are social studies podcasts, there are science podcasts, there's, parts of speech. So each podcast is about 15 minutes, and each one starts with a health literacy message, and there's also a character value woven throughout. So for example, Women of the Civil War, the health literacy message is, I can't even read that, portion size and energy levels. And then the character value is confidence. And those questions, those topics are brought up throughout the podcast, mainly focusing on, the main topic, but then also brought up in the discussion questions after the podcast. So here, for example, the podcast on physical versus political maps, and then the health message is personal space, and the character value is reliability. So, if your school has a real focus on social emotional learning, you could search for podcasts by social emotional learning topics. If you wanted to really focus on different health literacy, you could focus on those issues. But if you were using it more as a curricular supplement, like a core curricular supplement, it's just an added bonus that while kids walk and they're getting healthier, they're also building their health literacy. They're able to make better choices, as well as really building their social emotional learning skills. The app also has a Careers in Science series included with it. And I was fortunate enough a few years ago to interview scientists over at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. And so that whole series really talks about, I asked the scientists, imagine your 5th grade self, and what were you interested in, and what was your path to get where you are? So it talks about what those scientists do and sort of what they're trying to accomplish and the greater impact that their research has on the world, but also as a child, why they chose to focus on certain things and how they ended up where they are. So it's a really engaging series. So those are all available on the app as well. So all the podcasts, except for the Careers in Science series, but all of the podcasts are structured the same way. So at the beginning of the podcast, you have your health literacy message, and then the main content, and then at the end there's the summary. So for example, most podcasts, they are 2 students and their teacher who are out for a walk, having a conversation about whatever the topic might be, the Emancipation Proclamation, political and physical maps, or meteorology, or currents and tides, or whatever it might be. And so the health message, and it's very conversational, very engaging. So the podcast might start with one of the students saying, "Oh man, I can't believe I'm so hungry. I had 3 donuts for breakfast." And then the other student saying, "Joe, you shouldn't have 3 donuts for breakfast. You're going to make yourself sick." And then the other child said, and then the teacher pops in and she's like, "Oh, a donut every now and again is okay, but, too many will make you sick." And then a quick discussion about empty calories versus healthy calories. And then a pivot into the main content area, whatever that might be. Sometimes a smoother transition than others from the health literacy message to, meteorites. And then at the end, the summary, and just encouraging the students to have ask each other thick questions and have thoughtful discussions. So instead of, "Did you like it?" sort of, "What would you have done if you were in this situation?" Or, "Why do you think, she did X, Y, Z?" And then we do have extensive lesson plans that support each podcast. So here's a podcast on hot springs and geysers, and they're all the lesson plans are structured similarly. So at the top, you can see, the character value as well as the health message, and then the different objectives for what will be covered in that podcast. And then there's some vocabulary that's highlighted, so you can talk to your students about different vocabulary words that they might not be familiar with before the podcast begins. And then the questions for thought and discussion. So the first couple questions are just general, what's the main idea? It's sort of reviewing big ideas of the podcast. But then it does get into the social emotional learning. So for example, with hot springs and geysers, the question says, while hot springs occur gradually and peacefully, geysers appear dramatically and forcefully. Although they're very different, both are beautiful. And then the questions focus on how people interact with each other. So using geysers and hot springs as a starting point, what's the benefit of approaching things with patience and taking your time versus what are the benefits of approaching things boldly and confidently? So if children are comfortable sharing their own experience, they can talk about that. But if not, they can talk about things more in the context of what they've just listened to, the benefits of being calm and peaceful, or the benefits of being forceful, like a geyser. But anyway, so each podcast has that bridge where if a child is ready to talk about his or her experience, they can do that. But if they're not ready to be so vulnerable, they can just talk about the idea, the concept, but in the context of whatever the podcast topic might have been. And then there's a comprehension quiz that supports each podcast as well. And there's 10 questions for each quiz, and they go from basic recall down to higher level thinking skills, inferencing, main idea, that sort of thing, going down the Bloom's taxonomy or going up Bloom's taxonomy, however you want to think about it. And then the last 2 questions are always health related. So here the questions with the health literacy message at the beginning was about toxins. And so the last 2 questions focus on toxins. We do have a ton of adopter resources to support the program. And I'm going to click on this and it's going to take me to a web page, and forgive me, I need to pull this over. Why is this not working for me? Hold on, technical difficulty. Okay, let me move this over. All right, and I'm going to open up my screen a little bit more so you can see. Okay. So when you become an adopter of the program, you have access to teacher resources. And those teacher resources include, we have a Google quiz for all of the podcasts. And so when you are an adopter, if you're doing virtual, if you're, your students can listen to the podcast and then they can submit, you don't have to create Google quizzes. We've already done all that work for you. We've already curated lots and lots of supplemental resources, different websites, different web quests, different, lots of different things that are related. So for example, if I search for podcasts, and if I searched for political maps, click on that. And here's an example of the different resources that have been pulled together for this podcast. And so, we have worksheets, they're hands-on activities, different related videos. We do have a slide deck that supports each one so that you can introduce that with your students. And then also, like I said, the Google quizzes. So all of those are already pre-populated for you. So your students could go ahead and do that. Okay. All right, so now let's see, I am going to get rid of that and we're going to go to the next one. Okay. Sorry, you guys don't want to see that whole big thing. Okay. And again, the same sort of concept that if you're going to use it in a regular school situation, if and when we get back to regular school situations, this is not intended to replace PE or recess. The program is intended to be used during regular class time. So, instead of a social studies lecture, you're sitting down, you would actually do the walking classroom during social studies. But during out of school time, especially for programs that are tasked with providing, academic enrichment, the program is really just great with your masks. Okay, so we talked about how you have the electronic quizzes. If you're not familiar with how to use Google quizzes or, Google Classroom, we do have instructions on how to begin that. Another idea that you can use while your students with the program, if you're doing hybrid or remote, is just listening journals. And, while the students are home, they could listen on their own. They can talk about how, the day they listened, how far they walked while they were listening. We do encourage that the students write a 1-paragraph summary that just sort of helps solidify the learning. And then also maybe you could have them write 2 questions of what else they would like to learn, or 2 statements of what the podcast reminded them of, or maybe 2 thick questions that they would like to ask their classmate. You could also divide the students up into different groups. So if there tends to be more interest in one area, you can have a little listening pod and they can separate out and, that sort of thing. And while the different groups are talking, the teacher could meet with a small group and do remediation on whatever might need. Okay. Also, Fun Friday is a super fun thing to do, where the kids get to choose the activity that they get to choose the podcast that they want, and then they can share out and tell others what it was about. And then using Google Maps, you could also have students plot their walk, and they can even create scavenger hunts and things like that. And, where they could show their classmates where they've been, or, you can practice map skills. Okay, take, 3 blocks north and then, 2 blocks west, and where do you go? And, or, you could have them travel a certain amount of distance. Lots and lots of options. Oh, with your masks. Okay. And then of course you can have students create their own podcast, always super fun. There are so many free recording options available out there. There's too many out there for us to sort of, provide assistance on all of them, but they're all really easy to use. And then what you could do is and believe me, those kids are going to know how to do it. You don't even need to learn how to do it. You could just point the kids in the direction and they'll figure it out. But that really gives them an authentic, something to look forward to. They can do the research on something that they're interested in. They can create the podcast. They can add sound effects. It's a really, if the kids have to be in front of the screen, it's a really fun way for them to sort of, synthesize a lot of their learning. And then the teacher could post those podcasts on the website or Google Classroom. Okay, good thing. It's time for me to introduce Alex, because I'm starting to get really hot and sweaty. So I'm going to take off my scarf and I'm going to introduce Alex. He has been working on our app. He's fantastic. And so he's going to take over as host, and he's going to walk you through how to use the app, what's available, and then unfortunately for you, you're going to get stuck with me again when he's finished. Alex, why don't you go ahead and take it over?
Hey, can y'all hear me? All right, good. So I'm here to tell you guys a little bit about the Walking Classroom mobile app. So there are 2 different versions of the Walking Classroom mobile app. There's the traditional app, which is just how you would download any other app on your phone. You go to the App Store, you search the Walking Classroom, and you download the app. And that app has access to 26 different podcasts for free. And if you'd like to subscribe afterwards, you can always subscribe, and then you'll be paying for it that way. Now, the web-based app, which is the other version of the app, is a little bit different. You access it through your web browser on any device or computer. So basically, you'll just go to app.thewalkingclassroom.org. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up on the screen here. So this should show you. You just go to your web browser and you're on your phone. So if you use Safari or Google Chrome, you'd go there and you'd log in. The web-based app is like a pre-registered. You need to have an account already with us, and you're subscribed to it if you're accessing it. So you'll go to the app.thewalkingclassroom.org, and you'll log in with the credentials that we give you. And then this will be the homepage that you land at. And this app is pretty much exactly the same as the traditional app. They both look the same. They both operate the same way. But the benefit of the web-based app is that you can use it on other devices, like any device, as long as you have your login. And you can also use it like on a computer. So, kids who maybe don't have access to their own device at school, they can go home and they'll probably have access to a computer or maybe their parents' device or a neighbor's device, and they'll be able to access it that way. So I'll walk you through the app here. If we go to the top right, we can see the side menu, and we have all these little resources sort of about the walking classroom, the science behind it, some troubleshooting, a contact, and we can always go back to the home page if we just click home there. And then we have the different categories for the podcasts. So language arts, science, social studies, biography, and careers in science. And at the bottom here, we can see we can search for different podcasts. So we can go ahead and do that. And we can search for, maybe we'll do the geysers that Laura was talking about before. So there it is. We can go and pull it up. And here we'll get to the main podcast page. So we get a little podcast summary just telling us basically what this podcast is going to be about, the health message, and the character value that Laura mentioned before. And I'm going to use my pen here. And if we click on this link down here, we'll be able to see the next page with the discussion questions. And so these discussion questions are intended to, it's basically something for the kids to sort of have in mind while they're walking. So they're looking out for certain things in the podcast, and then you can come back and discuss these things, and the kids will maybe be able to point out, oh, I remember the answer to that question, or it'll help to lead a discussion. And if we go to the listen button up here, this is how you're going to access the actual audio of the podcast. And so here, it's just like any music player you're probably used to. If we go ahead and we can press play, and there's not going to be any audio right now just because we didn't want it to loop through on Zoom. You see I've paused it. So if you leave Wi-Fi, what you can do to ensure that you still can hear the entire podcast all the way through is you can sort of just pause the video before you go outside, just let it buffer for a minute, just like, maybe if your internet's a little bit slow and you want to watch a video, you would let a video buffer. So just let it buffer for a minute, and then you can go outside and listen to the whole podcast all the way through without an internet connection. So if you go out of Wi-Fi range, it's okay as long as you just let it buffer. And we'll go back in the top left. We can also, remember, access this from the home button here at the top. And we can access the same podcasts through these different categories. So I'll go ahead and click on science. And you can see here there are subcategories within the app. And so if I want to go back to the geysers, then I can maybe hit geology. And then I can find that same app here, or excuse me, same podcast here. And you can also see there's other podcasts in this category. So, the kids can kind of browse through and see maybe one interests them more than another. And maybe on Fun Friday, they could listen to mountains or whatever they'd like to do. But same thing, we can just access it just like that and go through. It's just another way to get to it. So it's very easy to navigate for the kids and also sort of to browse for them. And yeah, I think that's for the most part, that's how the web-based app works. Now the web-based app is, we do recommend it more for larger groups, like for bulk purchases, like classrooms will probably want to get the web-based app. Whereas with the traditional app, it'd probably be better for if you're at a more of a homeschool environment where you'll have access to this device always. Recommended that you probably use that. So yeah, Laura, if you'd like to take it from me, I think that covers the mobile app.
All right, thank you. Now, how do let's see. I don't know how, can you stop sharing your screen and then maybe, There we go. And I need to, sorry, hold on. This has, I apologize, my Zoom. There we go. Yes, we did a run through of this yesterday and it was so much smoother. I apologize. Here we go. Okay. Are we back? This is what it should be. Okay. So the nitty gritty. So thank you, Alex, so much. So the mobile app is $3.99 per device per month. And again, like Alex said, we really recommend that just for like home use, where it might just be one or two adopters. If you're at a school and you're looking for a classroom adoption or even a district-wide adoption, we would recommend the web-based app. It gives you much more, the students, it gives them much more flexibility. They can use it on different devices. And then there is a sliding scale depending on how many adopters and how long you'll be using that. So the sliding scale for price comes down. So, this is too small to look at, but basically we have 3-month, 6-month, 9-month, and 12-month options for subscriptions. And then the optional support contract. And the optional, and again, I'm just going to run through this because we'll send you this whole presentation so you can, and if you have any questions, you can just contact us. But the additional support contract, so we will do everything within our power, I promise, to help you get off to a strong start with the app regardless. Everybody receives the free adopter resources with free access to those curated resources. There's free online training, there's free email support. Half our staff are former teachers. We're eager for you to be successful. We also offer additional services throughout the duration of your contract if you were interested. Services like student training videos or phone support or custom professional development, user reports and student surveys, things like that. If you were interested in taking it to the next level, then you might be interested in looking into the optional support contract. The electronic teacher's guide is normally $100, and that does include lesson plans and quizzes for all 191 podcasts. But as a thank you for coming and spending some time with us today, we will go ahead and send all of you a link so that you can download the electronic teacher's guide for free. You can get a better idea of what's available and see if and how it might supplement and complement your instruction. So if you're interested in the bulk purchase, please go ahead and contact me. I am Laura at thewalkinclassroom.org, and that's our phone number, 919-240-7877. And then for individual use, just go on ahead. You can go to the Apple Store or Google Play, and you can go ahead and take care of that on your own. And if you do have any questions, please enter them in the chat box now. I would be happy to, answer any and all questions. Or, yeah. Okay, so this says, what devices do you see students using with the web app? So that's the beauty of it. And they can use whatever device they have access to. So as long as they're able to get some sort of, connection so that those devices can be, the podcast can be buffered, but, they can use Android, they can use Chromebooks, they can use iPads, they can use whatever, as long as they have access to get to the internet and to get those buffered, they could use any device. I hope that answers your question. Is walking with a Chromebook problematic? Not ideal, for sure. So what we recommend is, and actually we don't have them in where it's on back order, but we do have small backpacks, just sort of those string backpacks that the students could carry. So we understand the investment and the value of those. We certainly don't want kids holding them, but just those like athletic backpacks that sort of like cinch at the top, and the kids could wear them around their back. So we have heard of programs doing that. And again, the program, the walking classroom, we really don't recommend students younger than 3rd grade use the program. And, just because we always encourage students as they're walking to have only one earbud in so that they can listen, but that they can pay attention to their surroundings. And so, really by 3rd grade is just when they're just about to start to be able to do it. And then it does go up through 8th grade. And we do have some high school programs that use the walking classroom as well, but the sweet spot is really sort of like 4th grade up through 8th grade. Okay. Any more? Yes. Hi, Karen, I see you. Okay. If, so if you have any questions at any time, and like I said, feel free to contact us. Again, there's my email and there's our office number. The one question, can this program be watched later on? Absolutely. It's being recorded, and we will go ahead and send you all a link to the recording so that you could watch it, but then also if you wanted to share it with others. So keep calm and walk on, or as I like to say, keep clam and walk on. That's one of my favorite illustrations ever. I'm so grateful for your time. And I hope you stay healthy, and I hope that you hang in there. I know these are, nearly insurmountable, but if anybody can do it, it's teachers, and we're happy to help however we can. So thank you. That ends the webinar. If you'd like to stay on and unmute yourself and ask a question, I will stay here. But other than that, if you, that's it. There's no additional slides. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
So Laura, it's Kathleen from Phoenix,
Hi,
Arizona.
Kathleen from Phoenix. How are you?
Good. I wanted to see if you had any thoughts, because it looks like we may be going back virtual, completely virtual.
Yeah.
So can we talk about that? Because, we really are going to be using this systematically in our after school program in 22 schools.
Yeah.
And we're so excited to use it in person. We thought many of our classes would be in person, and now we're seeing, we don't know for sure, but so do you have any suggestions on how to make it translate so it really is still, we're just trying to work all that out right now. In fact, we're presenting this walking classroom to all of our site coordinators right now. My staff is in a meeting with them right now. So we're going to be asking questions about how are we really going to do this if we're at home?
Yeah, I would still, in the beginning, I would just really make sure we have that free online training. So it's imperative that all of the, the teacher, the facilitators really make sure that you have them do that free online training, and they could go through it as many times as they want. You can share that with as many people as you want. And that really does sort of establish best practices. And as far as, the translation to, an at virtual, sort of out of school experience, I think it would just become a matter of just routine. I'm just trying to think of just setting the expectation, and maybe the first couple times, the students, they sort of have, depending on, I'm mumbling here, but it's hard for me to answer that right now because I don't know what that might look like. So if it's going to be a certain time that those kids are going to be together, or if it's going to be sort of asynchronous where they're sort of expected to do it on their own, would it be that it's after school, but it's at a same time, or are you just going to be offering services but async? You know what? I would love to think more about this because and to get a better answer to you, because
one thing we thought about doing is, because in some of your information, you talked about how they even listened to it twice.
Yeah.
To help. So we thought, what if they walked with somebody at home? We're going to try to link it into a family engagement activity where we're not going to have our students walk alone. They have to walk with a podcast partner, we're calling it.
Yeah.
And so then they would walk before the lesson, and then we'd put this in a virtual See, then they'd actually be listening to it from the teachers, I guess, not on the walk-its, you know? So it's
Yeah.
kind of figuring out, so they would listen to it with a family member or a person that they could.
Great. Yeah.
Then the next day, they would hear it again in a virtual setting. And then I guess the teacher would just play their walk-it and they could hear it through the virtual. I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but it is completely, yeah, we would appreciate your thought process on helping us with that, because we're very committed to using this and we're going to be using it in a big way.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure it's going to be, you know, we know it's great and we love it. It's just, then we thought, well, would a teacher put like a fake background up behind her and pretend like she's walking? Like that as much, because we'd rather really have them walk. We don't want them walking in place, really. We don't.
Right. And I think that that this is really the ultimate flipped classroom, right? Is that the kids are out walking, and then, you know, when they do come back, you have the time where you could maybe review the comprehension quiz together. You could maybe, you know, really get into deeper discussion with those discussion questions. But maybe we could set up another time where we could talk with our program director, who's also a former teacher, and, you know, and maybe some of your staff, and we could really brainstorm, and, you know, we could help put together a plan, which we'd be more than happy to do. And then, you know, just because I think so many situations are going to be so different that I would hate to say I recommend to do it this way without knowing more.
Right. We were also thinking of making, like we were going to cut out like a paper shoe, and the kids are going to decorate it, and it's going to be like kind of like they might write on all their partners, or they could even, you know, chart themselves on a map. And it really represents how many podcasts they do, because we have to have a certain amount of days of attendance in our federal program.
Yep.
So we're thinking of creating a company, you know, like some kind of thing that they'll have at home. So
you don't even have to create it. We've already created it. We actually have, we already have a walking log, and it has, you know, the day, and the students list what podcast they listen to. You know, yeah. So we have all of that stuff. And, you know, you can turn it into where they set goals, where they start at their house and they want to walk to Disney World, or they want to walk to wherever, and how many days will, you know, you can turn it into a math lesson, you know, and so, and then if you collectively add all of those miles together, you get there that much faster. And so, yeah, so we really do have so many resources already created, which I would, you know, we're eager to share. And so that's why I think it would be just really helpful to sit. And so I can email, or if you wanted to email me whatever some of your times that work best for you, we'll make it work for us.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I appreciate you coming on the call. I know you're all crazy busy, so.
For the quizzes that are the Google quizzes, how do they access those on the app? Where would they find those?
Yep. So you'll access those on the web. So it's not within the app, but once you're logged in as an adopter, then you have access to all of that stuff.
Okay. So it's not in the app, but it's on the site.
That's right.
Okay. So then how do the kids get those then?
So the teacher would, you know, she could, within her Google Classroom account, she could link to those, and then it would score. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. And I do appreciate that. I will really look forward to talking to you.
Good. Me too. Me too.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I was going to see if anybody else has any more questions. So.
So that's, sometimes people don't, for whatever reason, they'd rather not do it in the chat. They do it in person. So I like to just sort of hang around just in case. Plus, I'm an extrovert by nature, so it gives me a chance to actually see people instead of, you know, just my pod.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm trying to figure out, I'm doing after school program. And so I sort of, one of those that I went ahead seeing everything. Then in my questions, I'm kind of glad I'm not too sure if the rest of my group's on or it's just me, because my kids said one wasn't able to come on and one said, can I leave early? Are you done? Okay. So I'm able to get on because I'm in California. So I'm going by the time difference.
Yeah, well,
And
thank you
so-
for joining us.
So that was almost one of my questions. So that means if I have two different groups, or not groups, two students after school program, and I guess we're trying to implement, and we're distance learning too. We don't know what's going on our part. So the quiz that we have to get on, so I would have to get a Google Classroom account. So I would be the one in charge giving the quizzes.
I mean, you could do it however you wanted with the electronic teacher's guide. It has a PDF of that quiz, and so you could, you don't have to use the Google Classroom or the Google
Okay.
Doc. It's just that it just makes it easier for those teachers who already have those accounts set up, that they don't have to recreate a quiz,
Right, because I have not set one up, and so I didn't want to confuse my kids with what they go with their Google accounts with their teachers. So
Sure.
those are two different
Yeah.
teachers, or actually one student has two teachers. My one, she only has one teacher. So I don't want to, that's what I was thinking, it's going to confuse them.
Yeah, sure. So you're not obligated to use the Google quizzes at all. That's just a convenience that we've provided.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but if you can have the PDF, and if you're more comfortable with that, then that's fine too.
Okay, so I could print up and have it sent to the students so they could actually touch it. Oh, okay, I kind of like that as well. Okay, that's what I was getting confused. I was thinking, how am I going to do this? Okay, that
No.
answers my question.
Good, I'm glad. And I apologize if for the confusion, but so you're not obligated to that. It's just, for those who, do it that way, we just try to cut out a step for them.
Okay, all right. Oh, it's just my clarifications, because I kept wondering I don't know.
I'm not a technical
makes it-
whiz either.
Make it easy, make it simple.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming out to learn more.
Okay.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Hi. I just want to say hi. We've exchanged some emails, and I've also talked to Professor Waite, and I just want to thank you so much for your support. For those that are queuing in, our school is doing an experiment based on the work that Laura has done, basically taking it to the next level and wondering if we can do synchronous learning while engaged in walking with a visual element as well. And so I just wanted to thank you for your support on this. I think it's going to be an exciting experiment.
Oh, I'm so glad. And thanks so much for joining us tonight. Isn't Ariane fantastic? She did our research, and she's just, an absolute powerhouse, and does it with the sun shining bright around her. She is, I'm really glad that you pursued it and you reached out to her, because she's really passionate about exercise and how the positive impact on learning. And so I appreciate the efforts that you're doing, and I'm thrilled that you guys have been able to connect.
For sure, for sure.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're done. I don't think we have any more questions. Alex, you were wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and keep calm and keep clam. Walk on. Take care.